Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula, and Johnny Sue is still spinning on those ones and twos. So, in the midst of a coronavirus epidemic, Donald Trump and the Senate, along with the House, have now snuck in a bailout for Wall Street. But not only that's not the only nefarious actions they've been taking place, they've also been messing around in Venezuela as Donald Trump seems to have stepped up his coup mentality as pertaining to Nicolas Maduro. With us today, we have a special guest, Al Suarez, who is a Peruvian-American who's worked on many campaigns like the Tim Canova campaign. But right now, he's also the producer of a documentary that's about to come out soon. That documentary tells the story of what the Venezuelan embassy protectors went through. Here's a look at the trailer. Take a look.
Free Venezuela, free DC. Free Venezuela, free DC.
This compound, this diplomatic building is inviolable, meaning it cannot be seized.
Preventing food from going up!
It's the police stopping them from getting food into the building.
You guys are breaking the law! Come on, inside! Shut up for a second! Come on, inside!
We have been holding down this space for over 2 weeks now.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Qué queremos?
We're back. All right, so we're back there. Al, thank you so much for joining us today. We were going to have you on a little bit down the road to talk about the documentary, but then all hell broke loose, and it seems that Donald Trump has actually put a bounty on Nicolas Maduro, some of his main people in his cabinet, even the chief judge minister, I believe, over there. But let's talk about this specific situation first, because I think this is also important. We followed the embassy takeover. We actually, the night it was announced, they went in there. We were actually at a rally with Tulsi Gabbard, and we actually asked her about her opinions about the whole situation. You were actually there. We've talked to Kevin Zeese before. In your own mind, in your own story, Al, tell us what happened.
Sure. So I was between classes living in South Florida at the time, and I found out that my comrades, Kevin Zeese, Margaret Flowers, Madame Benjamin, others that I've known for about 10 years were involved in these actions. And when I found out how urgent the situation was, there was no way I couldn't go. And so I flew to Baltimore, took the train down to DC, and just helped out with whatever I could. I didn't go with the intention to co-direct a film, which I'm doing now. So I had no intentions to go as a journalist, although I do come from a journalist background. Um, I only wanted to go as an activist to help my comrades and to try to deliver food and water to the embassy. And we have a lot of footage from our comrades that are on the ground there filming the actions that we were doing. But my primary concern was the fact that Dr. Margaret Flowers, Kevin Zeese, and two others that were ultimately arrested with them, Dr. Adrienne Pine of DC, David Paul of San Francisco, Kevin and Margaret, they're founders of Popular Resistance out of Baltimore. So when I found out how urgent the situation was, they were literally under siege. The electricity, water was cut for them to survive. They had to collect rainwater, just extreme situations. There was people up there that were elders. There was veterans. There was all types of activists, whistleblowers, people that showed up to show support. And so this just brought together so many different activist groups and organizations, and it was a moment in our nation's history. And it was, like a war scenario, as you saw in the first trailer. We have recently the trailer 2 revised that came out, but you see there a lot of the extreme situations that were happening. You had a national figure show up, Jesse Jackson, to try to deliver food and water there. And so under these circumstances, I felt obligated as an activist, as a human being, really, to go and to try to support and see what I could do to help. Later on, seeing how the media, not the alternative media, of course, but the so-called mainstream media,
Yeah.
was either not properly showing what happened or ignoring what happened. Even when Jesse Jackson was involved, and a Venezuelan exile who I had a run-in with tried to attack Jesse Jackson and stop him from delivering food. Even when those things were going on, the media barely touched it. So when I went home, just out of outrage of seeing the things that were going on and not coming to light, I said, I have to take part in making a film. And we found out that there wasn't, a film in motion yet, and so we felt obligated to do so. We went back to DC in January to do follow-up interviews. We traveled throughout the country to interview different people, intellectuals. We interviewed Canova. You mentioned earlier I was part of his campaign, so I'm good friends with him. We interviewed Chomsky and others. And so we've been going, we're a low-budget film, but we've been going and traveling and interviewing all these people, all these different organizations, to show the truth to the American people and to the world, so they can know what really happened in broad daylight in the middle of Georgetown, Washington, D.C.
Yep. So, and thank you for telling this story. I think it's so important, and that's why we wanted to pick this back up, because, a lot of us who, followed some of these candidates, these presidential candidates, matriculated towards like a Tulsi Gabbard because of the imperialism that the United States has. But when it comes to this particular situation in general, there were a lot of people that were in that embassy beforehand. How did the situation get so severe that it became down to what I call the Final Four, which is a basketball reference used, but how did it come down to these four, Kevin Zeese and company, becoming the only four, and why did it get to that severe that everybody else felt they had to leave?
Well, in April, there was up to 70 comrades inside the embassy at one time. But as you said, in the end, it was four people. And it's interesting because when I saw Kevin in the courthouse in January for one of his hearings, I told him, I wanted to get in. And if I had got in, I would have been arrested with you guys. And I said, what my favorite number is? And he said, what? And I said, 5. So I would have been the 5th. And he's known me for a long time. So he knew I meant what I said. And he knew what we did to try to help them. Even at 3 a.m. in the morning, we have some footage of that. And of course, the diplomatic police, the Metro cops, the Secret Service, they either did nothing and turned a blind eye, pretended to see nothing, including in broad daylight, when they were stealing our food or stopping or beating us. But sometimes they would do the beatings and arrest us as well. I mean, Jerry Condon, 70 years old, president of Veterans for Peace, just for bringing a zucchini that he tried to bring up to Kevin in broad daylight. They beat him to a pulp, bloodied.
Yeah.
You tell Americans this, they can't believe it. We have the footage. This happened. I referred to it in trailer 2 as the Twilight Zone. I said, this may seem unreal to you, like something from the Twilight Zone, but it's real. It's happened, And I think now, the momentum is dying down. More people are focused on coronavirus. There was a mistrial. They might retry the 4. I think we need to bring the momentum up, and we need to gather support and build coalitions and get together and unite, not only for the cause against U.S. imperialism in Latin America or Venezuela. This recent bounty move, you want to ask me about that? I mean, that's just utterly ridiculous. I can get into that. But, as a Chavista, as an anti-imperialist, for a long time, I'm outraged that this momentum is starting to go down, and we need to bring it back. This film, this hopefully will be out this year. We want the people to know the truth. We want to inspire people, because I firmly believe through activism, through revolutionary activities, we can change history. And it was a moment in history, what happened, in May of last year when I had arrived at the embassy in early May. Throughout those days there, every day, intense actions trying to help my comrades inside. It was sad, but at the same time, it was inspiring because you saw the unity of all those groups that don't necessarily work together on a lot of things, but they all came together, Code Pink, Popular Resistance, Answer Coalition, et cetera. They all came together, Veterans for Peace. We've interviewed veterans with North Carolina, and we've interviewed these guys. A lot of them are not very known, like Kevin Zeese and Maduro and Venezuelan, but we're interviewing them and shining the light on them because they all came together, ordinary people doing extraordinary things to try to save lives. That's ultimately what it came down to. And it was a microcosm of what's happening in Venezuela. Like they were trying to do a coup of the embassy. They were doing a coup of their own country and sanctioning, which is really economic warfare, their own people, and trying to starve out their own people. At least 40,000 Venezuelans killed from this. And now it's being exacerbated with Trump's reannouncement. But yeah, I mean, this is all, the dirty face of U.S. imperialism, in the U.S. empire in D.C. And we want to expose it. We want to expose it to inspire people to act, to put an end to this type of imperialist system.
And it hasn't ended either. I mean, it's still going in lieu of what happened the other day with Maduro, and Donald Trump under the coronavirus epidemic. He's get this kind of protection where they're paying attention to all that other stuff. We weren't paying attention to what was happening in Venezuela then. That's why I thought this embassy protector, what Kevin Zeese and the crew did was so important. to bring a light onto this kind of ideology, the Monroe Doctrine, that's still infected in our democracy, in especially our republic here, even with the Donald Trump administration. Let's talk more about when it was down to the final four. You had mentioned about the police department and all those workers out there, the police, the fire department. You kind of mentioned that they weren't necessarily against anybody, but they just kind of turned a blind eye to what was going on. Can you give a little bit more explanation to how they acted and performed when all this stuff was going on, i.e.,
I would say
Jesse Jackson trying to get food up there?
I would say 90% of the time, what I witnessed firsthand was they were actively trying to protect the Venezuelan exiles, 90% of the time. And 10% of the time, they were turning a blind eye. So it was actually rare that you would see them pretend not to see anything. They were usually beating us up, arresting us, and then ignoring when the Venezuelans assaulted us. And also, it's interesting that you mentioned the Monroe Doctrine, because Obama back then was accused of trying to bring back the Monroe Doctrine, and he denied it. And many presidents for many years have denied it. Bolton, who was fired soon after what happened in D.C., he openly admitted, he said, no, we're bringing back the Monroe Doctrine. And he lied to Trump. He said, oh, yeah, we're going to go in and do these sanctions and make this fake president. Maduro will be out in a week. He underestimated the determination of the people of Bolivar. I'm a Peruvian American, and Bolivar was a great liberator of the South American continent, even part of Central America, including Peru. And he was the man that inspired Chavez in the Bolivarian Revolution. He's the man that Bolivia was named after. And you saw there was a coup there recently as well. So lots happened since last year. U.S. empire is starting to rear its ugly head, and we need to take it on.
Yeah, I think before we get to the Maduro stuff, and I want to get to that about actually how the government is over there, because like you said, he had all these guys like Bolton, Elliot Abrams, they came into play. It's like, hey, we'll get this done 1, 2, 3. And if there was any hope the day after Donald Trump got elected, I thought he would be more of an anti-interventionist and maybe go work deals and cut a deal with Maduro for oil, whatnot, rather than kind of
backyard. Right.
Yeah, he just continued the same policies that Obama had, that Bush had, that Clinton had. It's the same type of imperialistic mentality, and we have never broken away from it. But before we get to that and what's really going on, the underestimation of all these people of the Maduro government and the people of Venezuela, when they finally went in there into the embassy to get these final four out, describe how that was. How was that whole process? Did Kevin and all the people try to grab on the furniture? Did they try to lock themselves down? Or at that point where they said, okay, take us out, take us out? Were you there when that actually happened and went down?
No, by then I flew back. My co-director David was there. But that was part of the things I was seeing on the internet that prompted me to say, no, we need to do a documentary. We need to do something. We have to expose this. It was very emotional for me. These are comrades that were risking their lives that I known for a long time. Seeing the bags go up that we helped get up, that was also very emotional and inspiring. But it was crushing seeing, just like in Standing Rock, because I'm also a water protector. They come in and they crush it. So you saw in the first trailer they had a guy with a rocket launcher, right? It was real. It was like a war scenario. They were coming in for 4 nonviolent activists that they knew were not armed, that they knew were under siege. They knew they were malnourished. Okay. And they went in like a war scenario to send a message, and they arrested them. And 2 jurors said, wait a minute. All the other jurors were like CIA, FBI, like that's what their jobs, admitting in court, right? But 2 jurors held out, and they had a hung jury. So 2 out of 12. And that's why there was a mistrial. Now they're trying to go after them again. But the government's trying to railroad them. They could have each got up to $100,000 fine, right? Because now they're going fines with Chelsea Manning and others. So they could have gotten the fines, or they could have got them a year in jail each, because it was the most severe type of misdemeanor in federal court in D.C. So they were trying to make an example out of our 4 comrades. I went up there to show support then. And, this is ongoing. But again, unfortunately, we're starting to lose momentum. People are starting to forget about our recent history. Therefore, the importance in this year 2020, this very politicized year, this year of the virus, people need to know what happened in our moment of history last year and prevent the government from making moves like this again.
Listen, that particular standout brought more attention to what was going on in Venezuela than mostly anything that was going on at that time. We covered it. Johnny made a great video of the opposition, the Guaido regime, the people that they had on the ground. Very, very just demeaning, harsh, racist kind of fucking people that were really just, they were trying to get these people food.
They called me maricon, and that means faggot. So they would say homophobic, racist, classist things all the time,
Yeah. We witnessed it. And, but here's the thing too, Al, that really bothers me. You talk about Max Blumenthal, who once again, they dropped the charges, but they still can bring it back. This group, the hung jury, they can still bring it back. anybody who speaks out against the imperialist, oligarchy, they seem to get silenced and shunned. We got Julian Assange just sitting behind bars. Chelsea Manning finally got let go. But, when it comes to this kind of truth-telling, which the embassy protectors have really gotten out there, it seems like they just want to silence and shut their voice down and quiet them no matter what.
Let me tell you something real quick.
Go ahead.
So I'm glad that you mentioned Max, because right around the same time in October last year that they sent the SWAT team, and mind you, the order said he was armed and dangerous. People died from that. Of course, he had no arm. They were trying to intimidate him. But around the same time that happened, there was a detective looking for me in South Florida, and we're going to reveal all of that. We're going to reveal what the Secret Service did, how they've harassed activists since then. All of we're going to hold nothing back. All that's going to be revealed in the film. But we really need your support in order to get that, and we're in the final phases of that.
So let's transition to what's going on over there right now, because obviously we saw that Donald Trump put a bounty on Maduro's head, and in return, Maduro then said they were going to start trying Guaido for his trying to overthrow the government, tick for tat. But what kind of government does Maduro actually run in Venezuela? As a Chavista, explain to the people out there what type of government is actually run there. Not what we're told by the mainstream media, but what actually takes place in Venezuela.
Well, first off, one of the people that reacted to that said no country would dare put a bounty on Trump. And then soon after, Iran, not Venezuela, they wouldn't do that. But Iran's like, oh yeah, 80 million for Trump's head now, right?
Yeah.
With the sanctions against them and the virus, then the killing of their general. But let me go into Maduro. So as Bolivarians or as Chavistas, after Chavez, dignity is very important to us. We're not going to just sit beside and act like servants of empire, like the Colombian regime has done, like regimes have done for decades in Latin America. So of course Maduro was going to do a retaliatory move, not a suicidal one, not necessarily say, hey, we're going to have a huge bounty on Trump's head now. He's smarter than that. But the least he could do, because I've been pushing. I said, why are you been so soft on Guaido? Why'd you let Lopez, who's a terrorist like Guaido, live in his mansion in house arrest and then let him get released? And now he's hiding in the Spanish embassy. So it's like, so I was saying that was my only criticism of Maduro as a Chavista. My only criticism ever of Maduro has been, why are you too soft on the opposition? But also it's understandable, right? Because
totally,
if they arrest Guaido, the U.S. would use that as an excuse for
absolutely.
Yeah. But now, they're putting a bounty on Maduro's head. What's he going to do? Of course, they're going to try Guaido as a traitor. What would happen here in the United States if a guy was going around? No, let's put it this way, Pelosi, right? So let's rewind back to 2016. This is a very good analogy. Rewind back to 2016. Pelosi doesn't like the election results, and she says, "Okay, I don't like that Trump won. I don't like Hillary. I'm going to be the new president now." Yeah. And I want Russia to come and invade the United States to make sure I can be president. I want Russia to sanction our country and kill at least 40,000 of our people. That's the equivalent of who Guaido is. And I know people, I'm a Chavista, but I know people in the opposition that are moderate in South Florida, because a lot of the Venezuelan South Florida like Maduro, and they're outraged like Guaido too. And his own party threw him out. He's no longer the head of his own party. And Trump's still saying he's the president, still bringing him to the State of the Union, having Pelosi and the Democrats applaud Guaido.
I know, isn't that disgusting?
He's a puppet. He's a traitor.
That was one of the most disgusting things I've seen, was that him in Congress during the State of the Union and the Democrats applauding him, standing up. It was disgusting. And let me say this much, though, Al. I think that move that Maduro did for Guaido, allowing him to protest, have, organizations there, actually using his military to protect Guaido and his people at times, saying he has the right to assemble. I thought it was genius, because he then didn't let America even furthermore manufacture consent to go on in. But right now, I guess they crossed the shit line when you put a bounty on it, and they have to say enough is enough, and you have to deter the oppositions from working with Western imperialists anyways. So, I mean, this whole thing that transitioned, it's kind of weird, it's crazy, but I thought Maduro actually, played a great part, did a great job through all the adversity he's facing. Now, the elections there, I didn't put it in the questions, but I just thought people talk about our elections over here, and I, as an election integrity activist, you worked for Tim Canova. It's so kind of crazy, because these are the things that we're tied to. It's our foreign policy and our election integrity. But you even interviewed, I believe, somebody from the Carter Institute when it came to the elections of Venezuela. Aren't they a lot more sound and solid than the elections we have right here in the States, Al?
Before I answer, let me get real quick into recent history here. So back when Chavez was president, he actually was offering to take part in the peace negotiations between the Colombian government and the FARC guerrillas. Some are who were involved with the narco terror trade. But at the same time, he was trying to get the FARC to release Ingrid Betancourt, who was a Green Party candidate in Colombia, so she wouldn't be held by them anymore.
I remember that.
There was a FARC ambassador from Europe that came that because Chavez had to deal with Colombia at the time with a more moderate government back then, that he sent them there. So for them to say that Chavez or Maduro are narco terrorists, like these claims by Trump now, are absurd. Now, when it comes to elections, I was at a conference. This was shortly after Canova's last campaign, which I was a part of. It was an election integrity conference, and there was a woman that I just met by chance, and I wanted to interview her right there and then, and I did. And her name's Elizabeth Burka, and she worked for the Carter Institute. And and you see in the trailer 2 revised on our YouTube, her admit that Carter didn't want to supervise elections in Florida when the dispute with Gore and Bush was going on, because he said in the United States we don't have free and fair elections. And now with electronic votes, we saw with Canova, it's even worse. So the point of the interview with Canova was not just talking about coups in the CIA, which he talked about in the second trailer, but also to say, who are we to judge, right? And actually, if you vote in Venezuela, you get a receipt. Do you know that?
Yeah.
You get a receipt printed out showing how you voted. But here in the United States, with our capitalist system, you could buy something for 10 cents, a piece of candy, and that's worth more than a vote, because then you get a receipt, but they don't want to do that here. Yeah. So that's why the Carter Institute approved elections, on all the elections they supervised in Venezuela. That's why 150 international observers, I know a couple of them personally, that's why they approved the elections of Maduro and Chavez. They're a very democratic system. They had 2 candidates running against Maduro. The other candidates boycotted it. They went under U.S. orders, including Guaido, and he never even ran for president. And Maduro still got 68% of the vote.
Yeah.
He ran against 2 moderate opposition members, and the majority of the people, the working class who had their conditions bettered in spite of the blockade, they backed Maduro still.
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing, I'm going to use that as a tweet later on. Elections in America aren't as good as a 10-cent piece of candy, because at least you get a receipt for that 10 piece of candy. It's amazing. I'm going to use that later. I'm stealing your shit there, Al. I love that.
Yeah,
all right. So moving forward right now, when it comes to Maduro and the Venezuelan government, it seems they've outlasted every single shot that the Trump administration has thrown at them. However, it looks like Joe Biden's going to be the Democratic nominee, even though some people can't handle it. It means he's going to lose to Donald Trump. How should Maduro move forward, being that Donald Trump might still maintain his presidency for another 4 years, and he's been so hostile towards his government? I mean, is there any sign of Maduro breaking, and what should he do?
Let me tell you, even if Bernie's elected, with the influence of the military-industrial complex, unless we have a real revolution here, Venezuela is still going to be dealing with an empire. Whether it's Biden, Trump, Bernie, Maduro's prepared. He knows that he's going to be dealing with a similar situation. He's not going to let himself get fooled by empire, as prior leaders have, because Maduro was very close to Chavez. Chavez was very smart, and he made sure when he passed away that the legacy of Bolivarianism, of socialism of the 21st century, would continue on, democratic socialism in Venezuela. And so people talk about dictatorship in Venezuela. This is just ignorance. If somebody can support democratic socialism under Bernie, they really need to know what's really going on in Venezuela. And I know a lot of Bernie supporters do, but more of them need to know the truth. More of people and activists in general, they can't succumb to the lies of the corporate media and the propaganda. And that's what they're trying to expose in this film.
You know what? Well said, too. That was the thing about when Roger Waters went after Bernie Sanders. It's like, hey, man, this is the type of government you're trying to run over there. You have to stick up for these people, because like we talked about the sanctions, economic warfare, and who pays the price? The poor people of Venezuela. And you're actually putting your boot on the neck of those people. And that's why, touche to what you just said right over there. Maduro's concentrated on empire. That's where he's got to be, regardless who's the leader in America. Is there another Chavista leader waiting in the wings in Venezuela? Because a lot of people always say this kind of stuff, like they said about when it came to Morales, that Morales shouldn't have sought out another term, that he should have had another disciple or somebody from his party, his ideology, waiting in the wings, somebody younger to take over. Even though it seems that the people really wanted Evo, even if the people do really want Maduro, is there another young Chavista waiting in the wings that you know about?
Well, let me first tell you that Evo Morales is now backing his former economic minister to run for the presidency in May. Hopefully that's not rigged, right? But for example, the son-in-law of Chavez, Ariasa, who's the foreign minister who speaks English very well, and he had some contacts with the protectors. I mean, that wasn't run by the Venezuelan government, but there was some contacts. Ariaza's a good leader, so God forbid something happens to Maduro, Jorge Ariaza possibly could take over. The vice
Ariasa?
president is a woman of Venezuela, Delcy. Delcy potentially could take over. So there are other people there besides Maduro, and they're united. There's not rivalry among the Chavistas. They understand the importance of unity and how there's infiltration and groups that always try to divide them. They're very disciplined people. They understand that they have to maintain unity in this crisis.
At the end of the day, the negative foreign policy stands towards Venezuela and Bolivia. Obviously, Venezuela has oil, Bolivia has lithium, but is it more than just a resource extraction, Al? I mean, isn't it the ideology that America's kind of fighting against because they don't want their own citizens to see what a democratic socialist type of government could give to the actual everyday poor people?
So when Obama declared that Venezuela was a threat to the United States, every single country in the hemisphere south of the Rio Grande voted to condemn that move by Obama. This is back when they were united. Even the center-right governments succumbed to the pressure of the people and said, yes, we're going to condemn what they said about Venezuela back then. You don't see as much unity now, but I think the left's starting to return. We had a recent election in Argentina. But actually, at that time, I said I agree. And people were shocked by that. They're like, we thought you were Chavista. What do you mean you're going to agree with Obama? Says, yes, the Bolivarian government is a threat to the United States because it's leading its people in a workers' revolution democratically. Of course, there's a threat to the U.S. elites. They don't want the people to know about the gains that the Venezuelan people have done through elections, mind you. Just like Bernie's running, Chavez ran back in the late 90s, trying to accomplish a lot of the same things. But no, they want to make it dictatorship. They want to make it this. They want to make it that because they feel threatened by the example of the Latin people and the Venezuelans standing up to the U.S. empire. Trump even sanctioned Maduro's wife, but there was sanctions going back to Bush, to Obama. But these Trump sanctions are extreme, not just against Venezuela, as I mentioned earlier, against Iran, against anybody that's willing to stand up to the U.S. empire. But the U.S. is starting to lose influence in the world. We're starting to see the East rise up. China's handling this crisis well. Russia, China are standing up. So it's no longer the U.S. being the only empire in the world, and the U.S. economy is starting to go in decline. It might have the weapons, but weapons are not everything.
Yeah.
So we're in a phase now where things are starting to change. The conscience of people are starting to change. The young people don't watch the CNN or fake news anymore. So now people are waking up and watching your type of shows, alternative media. And I'm confident that in this free time people have during this crisis that they will know the truth. And through my film, hopefully they'll be inspired and know that truth as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people should be inspired about what you can really obtain when you have free, fair, and transparent elections. That's why you're such a juicy guest, because you work for Canova, you understand that stuff, and you're also that Chavista who's lived down in Peru, and you can explain what it's like in South and Central America. And what you just said, you hit it right on the nose. Of course, the Bolivian government is a threat to the United States. It's a threat to the United States elites because it shows what the people can ascertain. Let's look at this last video that we have up before we get you out of here, because this is by the Trump administration when I believed he sanctioned Maduro's wife, right?
Right, that's what I mentioned, yes.
So we'll look at this quick video. It's 1 minute and 32 seconds, and then you kind of break it down what it's all about, all right?
Mm-hmm.
El gobierno de Estados Unidos sacó un decreto de esos que ellos sacan, de sanciones, nada más y nada menos que contra la primera dama de Venezuela, Cilia Flores. Nunca se había visto algo así. Si ustedes quieren atacarme, atácanme a mí, pero no se metan con Cilia, no se metan con la familia, no sean cobardes. Hoy han sacado un decreto de sanciones contra Cilia. Su único delito, ser mi esposa. Como no pueden con Maduro, se van contra Cilia. Y tampoco van a poder contra Cilia, porque Cilia es una mujer aguerrida. Gracias, Donald Trump, por rodearme de dignidad. Eso es como una medalla aquí. Cada sanción del gobierno gringo, además de ilegal e inútil, es una medalla para nosotros los revolucionarios. Es una condecoración, porque demuestra que somos valientes, corajudos, y que estamos en el camino correcto.
There he is. I guess nobody's everybody's fair game when it comes to Donald Trump. He went after Maduro's wife. He doesn't care. Break it down and explain to us what that was all about there, Al.
She's not even a member of the government. That was such a cowardly move to go after his family like that. And the U.S. government also went after his nephews. I mean, there's been all types of persecution throughout the years. But let me tell you this. Besides dignity, I mentioned dignity is very important to Chavistas. Resolve is as well. And so my friend called me the other day and said, what's this about the bounty? And I said, this is just going to make my resolve stronger. He says, what do you mean? And you see that video and what Maduro said, he was actually thanking Trump, right?
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
It solidifies us as Chavistas when there is oppression. And this goes back to Bolivar and how he took on the whole Spanish Empire against all odds. Fighting against all odds. That's part of being a socialist, part of being a Chavista. And that's something we're going to show on our film. And a lot of people are scared of that. The elites, they're doing everything possible. They took down our GoFundMe a couple times already. We have it back up. But this is what they do. They want to silence us. They want to censor us. They're afraid of the truth of what Chavism is and what the potential it could be for Americans in the working class. But the truth is going to have to come out. It's like Lincoln said once. He said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
Yeah, it really is, because we're moving further away from any type of, what's the word I'm looking for, democracy, true democracy, as far as killing our imperialistic needs. It seems like both Democrats and Republicans are united against this. Even Hollywood making Jack Ryan, where Venezuelans are. I know, right? You're laughing, but we talk about it all the time. Jack Ryan is trying to foil a plan between the Venezuelan government and the Russians.
I watched one episode of that, and they called the guy Nicholas. So they changed his last name, but it's so obvious Nicolas Maduro, right? Because Nicolas is Spanish. Like there was a movie where they called the guy Vladimir Pushkin, a Russian. It's almost like Putin, right? I mean, it's so obvious what Hollywood's doing.
Even in that stupid show with and it was a pretty good show with Kevin Spacey. The Russian dictator had the same background as Putin. He was a thug, ex-KGB, and they made him out to be like a pig. You know what I'm saying? It's like they really manufacture consent through Hollywood, because everybody does have like this G.I. Joe mentality anyways. Al, this has been a great interview. We're going to have many more. Come back with us, talk a little bit more down the road about what's going on in Venezuela. You keep us updated, and you'll keep us updated when your documentary is going to drop.
Yes, we were planning on it coming out by the end of April. It's probably going to be the end of May now because of the virus. Anybody can go on, if they don't have a chance to look on my Twitter or look up our GoFundMe, just go on Google and type in the words Embassy Protectors Documentary Fund. And it's the first thing that pops up. We're in the final phase. We really appreciate your help and the help of your supporters so we can get this out the way. And let me tell you, when Maduro makes a deal with the Russians, it's out in the open. It's not going to be a secret like this show they have on Amazon Prime run by Bezos, right? In Hollywood.
No doubt. I mean, and I think Russia's been helping out Venezuela with what's going on over there as well, too, when it comes to the
corona. If it wasn't for that, the U.S. would have invaded already.
Yeah.
So I might not agree with all of Putin's policies. I'm a socialist, but at least on his foreign policy, especially he's coming to the aid of these people and preventing all-out U.S. invasions. Yeah.
Hey, listen, in Italy, I'm an Italian-American, but in Italy, the EU left them hang them out to dry. NATO hung them out to dry. It was who? Cuba and Russia and China coming to the aid. All the bad people, right? But yet they're doing all the good things when it comes to the pandemic.
System, yeah.
Al, we'll have you back on soon.
All right, brother. Peace.
Thank you so much. For Pasta Jardula and Johnny Sue on the ones and twos, Venezuelan Protectors. Go check out Al's documentary. It's going to be coming out soon. Combo out.